At 57, Will Smith has the kind of smile that's seen too much. He's been the hero, the clown, the king, the meme, and the man who hit rock bottom in front of the entire world. But what people don't know is that behind the charm, behind the apologies and speeches, there's a list. 5 names that remind him what pain really costs. When asked in a closed interview if he still believes in forgiveness, Will didn't hesitate. He just said, "I do. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting people hurt you twice." Then he leaned back, looked straight at the camera, and added, "These 5, they showed me that fame doesn't change you. It reveals you." 5 names. 5 stories of betrayal, ego, and truth. Not because he hates them, but because they made him see the parts of himself he never wanted to face. "You can lose money," Will said softly. "You can lose fans. But when you lose your peace, that's the real tragedy." And with that, he smiled. The smile of a man who's finally ready to tell the truth. Number 5. Number 5, 50 Cent. There was a time Will Smith called 50 Cent my little brother in chaos. They laughed, joked, traded advice, 2 men who knew how to turn pain into performance. But after the slap at the Oscars, the brotherhood cracked. Instead of reaching out, 50 turned it into a punchline. He mocked Will publicly, posting memes, jokes, and lines that cut deeper than he'd admit. One message read, "You can't take a joke. Hollywood's soft now." Will tried to ignore it until he couldn't. "You don't know how heavy silence feels," he said once, "until you hear laughter aimed at your lowest point." Years later, when 50 reached out to make peace, Will answered, "You can't joke your way into someone's pain and call it love." To him, 50 Cent symbolized the new breed of Hollywood, where empathy is replaced by entertainment. "He's not my enemy," Will said quietly. "He's just a reminder of how cheap humanity gets when the world's watching." And just like that, the laughter stopped meaning anything. Number 4. Chris Rock. This one, everyone knows, but nobody knows why. Will and Chris Rock were never enemies. They were colleagues, sometimes even friendly. But behind the smiles was a tension that had simmered for years. It started back in 2016, when Chris hosted the Oscars and joked about Jada Pinkett Smith's boycott. Will didn't react then. He bottled it up. Years later, that pressure, mixed with shame, exhaustion, and ego, exploded. The slap was only the surface. The real wound was older. Afterward, Will reached out. Chris didn't answer. "He had every right," Will said. "But silence hurts more than fists." When asked if he still despised Chris, Will sighed. "Despise? No. But I regret the man I became in front of him." He paused, eyes heavy. Sometimes the person you hurt most is the one who reminded you who you really were. For Will, Chris wasn't his enemy. He was his mirror, and the reflection wasn't kind. Number 3, Tom Cruise. When Will Smith first met Tom Cruise, he was starstruck. Tom was the ultimate Hollywood alpha, charming, intense, unstoppable. Will wanted to learn from him. For years, they traded notes on success, discipline, image. But over time, Will saw something else. A man consumed by perfection. "He doesn't rest," Will said once. "He performs even when no one's watching." On a film set in 2010, Will tried to discuss collaboration. Tom smiled politely, then spent the next hour talking only about himself. "That's when I realized," Will said, "he wasn't listening. He was auditioning for reality." When a journalist asked about their friendship, Will laughed. "He's the only man I've met who could make a compliment sound like a resume." Still, there was admiration. Will didn't hate Tom. He pitied him. He's what I could have become if I kept performing instead of healing. To him, Tom Cruise was the ghost of his own ambition. Proof that success without vulnerability becomes a prison made of applause. Number 2. Jaden Smith. No list hurt more to write than this one. Jaden isn't a rival. He's blood. But in the years after the slap, something broke between father and son that cameras couldn't capture. Jaden had always been outspoken, wild, a free spirit. Will had always been the protector, the one holding everything together. But when Jaden publicly distanced himself after the Oscars, saying he needed his own path, it hit Will harder than any headline. I raised him to speak truth, Will said. I just never thought his truth would walk away from mine. They spoke months later. No yelling, just quiet. Jaden said, "You taught me how to survive fame, Dad. But I had to learn how to survive you." That line stayed with him. Sometimes, Will whispered, the people you love most have to lose you to find themselves. He doesn't despise Jaden. He despises the wall fame built between them, a wall made of expectations, legacy, and love that got too heavy to carry. He's my biggest heartbreak, Will said, and my greatest hope. Number 1, Charlize Theron. When Charlize Theron and Will Smith filmed Hancock, sparks flew, not romantic ones, but creative ones that burned too hot. On set, she challenged him constantly, questioned his choices, mocked his need to be liked. At first, Will admired her honesty. Then it turned toxic. "You hide behind charm," she told him once, "and you hide behind attitude," he replied. Their fights became legend. At one point, she walked off set for a day saying, "He wants to be everyone's hero, even off camera." Years later, in an interview, Charlize called him too calculated to be real. Will didn't respond, but his silence said everything. "She wasn't wrong," he said quietly, but she didn't have to say it out loud. To Will, Charlize embodied what Hollywood rewards, confidence without compassion. And yet, deep down, he respected her for seeing through his armor. "She reminded me," he said, "that sometimes truth sounds like cruelty when you're not ready to hear it." That's why she's number 1. Not because she hurt him the most, but because she forced him to confront the man he pretended to be. When the interviewer asked, "Do you really despise these people?" Will smiled, a real one this time, small and honest. "No," he said. "I despise what they showed me, the parts of me I didn't want to see." He paused, then pulled out a notebook, worn at the edges. Inside were 5 names. Under them, a single sentence. "They broke me, so I could rebuild." He laughed softly. People think pain makes you bitter. It doesn't. It just teaches you who was never meant to hold your peace. Then he looked at the camera, his voice steady. The slap wasn't about anger. It was about everything I never said. And for the first time, Will Smith didn't sound like a superstar. He sounded like a man confessing to himself. At 57, Will Smith no longer runs from silence. He sits with it. He meditates, writes, listens, not to applause, but to that quiet voice he used to ignore. The world still jokes about him. Memes still circle online. But he's past defending himself. "I'm not the hero anymore," he says. And that's freedom. When asked what the list means now, he smiled. "It's not about who I despise. It's about what I survived." He keeps that notebook on his nightstand. Every morning he reads the line at the bottom of the page. The line he wrote after the storm, after the silence, after the slap. You don't get to choose who breaks you, but you do get to choose who you become after. Will Smith isn't trying to be perfect anymore. He's just trying to be real. And maybe, just maybe, that's the first honest role he's ever played.